The first time her needle touched my skin, I knew my life had irrevocably split into a before and an after. The sterile, air-conditioned chill of the gallery was a world away from the humid, thrumming warmth of her studio, iron and ink. Here, the air smelled of antiseptic, green soap, and something uniquely her, a mix of sandalwood and the sharp, metallic scent of ozone before a storm. I, Genevieve Rutherford, heiress to a hotel empire, lay on my stomach on the padded table, my cheek pressed against the medical paper, my body trembling not from pain, but from the sheer, terrifying intimacy of it all. Her name was Wren, a name for a small, brown bird, something plain and unseen. There was nothing plain about her. She was all sharp lines and soft shadows, her arms a canvas of intricate black work, a tapestry of thorns and blooming flowers that climbed from her wrists to disappear under the sleeves of her black tank top. A silver ring glinted in her eyebrow. Her focus was absolute, a furrow of concentration between her dark brows as her gloved hand, steady as bedrock, guided the vibrating machine. The design I had chosen was a rebellion hidden in plain sight, a single, elegant swallow in flight, its wings unfurled across the back of my shoulder, a place my mother's cocktail dresses and my father's disapproving gaze would never see. This was the visual curiosity, the twist in my own narrative, the Rutherford scion, whose value was measured in stock portfolios and bloodlines, voluntarily marked by the hands of a woman my world would dismiss as crude. But there was nothing crude about her touch. Each pass of the needle was a precise, burning meditation. It was not a violation, but an inscription. She was not defacing me. She was reading me, translating some unspoken part of my soul into a language of ink and skin. I had walked in seeking a small act of defiance. I had not anticipated the artist herself becoming the revolution. Underscore 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 underscore. My life before Wren was a gilded cage. Every move was choreographed, from the cut of my couture dresses to the calculated smile I offered the paparazzi. I was the sole inheritor of the Rutherford name, a legacy of polished marble and cold, hard cash. My desires were irrelevant. My duty was to be beautiful, manageable, and eventually to marry well to further consolidate the empire. I felt like a living ghost in my own life, haunting the halls of penthouses and boardrooms, my reflection in the endless windows a girl I barely recognized. The idea for the tattoo was a spark in the darkness, a tiny, secret claim to my own body. I found Wren's portfolio online, a stark contrast to the bland corporate websites I was forced to navigate. Her work was breathtaking, not just images, but stories etched into skin. There was a raw, emotional honesty to it that called to the hollow space inside me, making the appointment felt more transgressive than any of the shallow rebellions of my youth. The studio was in a part of the city I was never supposed to visit, all exposed brick and vibrant street art. The first time I saw her, she was laughing with a client, her head thrown back, the sound a low, genuine melody that cut through the sterile silence of my world. When she turned her gaze to me, her eyes were the color of rich, dark earth after a rain. They didn't scan me for my designer label or my net worth. They simply saw me. I felt naked in a way I never had before. The initial consultation was a quiet, intense affair. I showed her my crude sketch of the swallow, a symbol of freedom and safe return. She studied it, then studied me, her gaze so penetrating I had to look away. She took my pencil and, with a few confident strokes, transformed my clumsy drawing into something alive, something that breathed. "It needs more life," she had said, her voice a low hum that resonated in my bones. "It needs to look like it's truly breaking free." In that moment, she saw not just the client, but the cage. The first session was a baptism of fire and sound. The buzz of the tattoo machine became a mantra, and her presence, a calming anchor in the storm of sensation. She explained every step, her voice a steady murmur against the whirring. She told me to breathe, and I found myself matching my breaths to hers, a silent synchronization that felt more intimate than any touch I had ever known. When her hand rested on my bare back to steady herself, the heat of her palm through the latex glove was a brand. It was a professional touch, yet it sent a current through me so powerful I had to bite my lip to stop from making a sound. I was the heiress, accustomed to being served, but here I was utterly at her mercy, and the sensation was terrifyingly liberating. Underscore 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 underscore. The turning point came after the third and final session. The swallow was complete, a stunning piece of art that felt more a part of me than my own name. I stood before the mirror, my shirt draped low, staring at the bird on my skin. I felt a strange sense of loss, not for my unmarked skin, but for the end of our sessions, for the legitimate reason to be in her presence. As I was paying, a downpour started, a sudden, violent deluge that lashed against the studio windows. My driver was 20 minutes away. Wren was cleaning her station, her movements efficient and graceful. The silence between us was thick, charged with all the unspoken words from our hours together. "You should wait it out," she said without turning around. I was about to make some tea. It wasn't a question. It was an offer I couldn't refuse. I followed her to the small back room, a space that was unapologetically her. It was cluttered with sketchbooks, ink bottles, and plants that thrived despite the neglect. It was the polar opposite of my minimalist penthouse. It was alive. She handed me a chipped mug of steaming chamomile tea. Our fingers brushed, and this time there was no latex barrier. The contact was a jolt, a live wire connecting us. I flinched, and a drop of hot tea splashed onto my wrist. Without a word, she took my hand, her touch firm yet gentle, and wiped the droplet away with her thumb. Her thumb stroked over the delicate skin of my inner wrist, a slow, deliberate caress that had nothing to do with cleaning up a spill. My breath hitched. I looked from our joined hands to her face. Her dark eyes were no longer just observing. They were consuming. The air left the room. The sound of the rain faded to a distant hush. The space between us collapsed without either of us moving. It was the most profound silence I had ever experienced, screaming with possibility. She leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to pull away, to reclaim my title, my distance, my cage. I did not move. I was rooted to the spot, a prisoner of my own longing. Her lips met mine. It was not a gentle first kiss. It was a confession. It was a collision of two worlds. Her mouth was soft but demanding, tasting of tea and a wild, untamed freedom I had only ever dreamed of. My carefully constructed composure shattered. I kissed her back with a desperation that shocked me, my hands coming up to clutch the leather of her vest, pulling her closer. The mug clattered to the floor, forgotten. In that kiss, I was not Genevieve Rutherford, heiress. I was simply a woman, being utterly and completely unmade. Quick reminder, if you're enjoying this story, hit subscribe to Sapphic Tales so you don't miss the next one. underscore 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 underscore. After that, we built a secret world. Our encounters were stolen, precious things. I would slip away from charity galas and bored dinners, trading my heels for worn-out sneakers, my diamond necklace for the simple, weightless feeling of her lips on my throat. Her apartment was my sanctuary, a small space above the studio filled with the scent of her and the sound of the city that felt more like home than any of my family's properties. The second kiss was in that apartment, against her front door the moment it closed behind us. It was hungry, frantic, a release of days of pent-up longing. The third was on her couch, slow and deep, as her fingers traced the wings of the swallow on my back, her touch a reverent rediscovery of her own art, her own claim on me. She introduced me to a version of myself I never knew existed. The woman who could cook a messy, delicious pasta without worrying about the stains. The woman who could laugh until she cried. The woman who felt beautiful in one of Ren's old band t-shirts and nothing else. Our intimacy was a language of its own. The first time we made love, it was by the light of a single lamp, the rain painting shifting patterns on the walls. Her hands, so steady with a needle, trembled as she unbuttoned my blouse. She touched me not as a precious object, but as a living, breathing masterpiece. She mapped the landscape of my body with her hands and her mouth, learning the secret places that made me gasp. When her fingers slid under the waistband of my underwear, tracing the curve of my spine, I arched into her touch, a silent plea for more. Right there, I whispered into the skin of her neck, and she obeyed, her touch knowing certain. She unraveled all my walls, not with force, but with a patient, devastating tenderness that left me sobbing her name into the pillow, my body shuddering with a release that felt less like a climax and more like a homecoming. In the afterglow, we lay entwined, our limbs a tangled mess, our hearts beating a slow, synchronized rhythm. She traced the lines of my palm, and I told her things I had never told anyone, my fear of never being truly seen, my terror of the gilded future that awaited me, the crushing weight of my name. She didn't offer solutions or platitudes. She just listened, her silence a safe harbor for my fears. In return, she whispered her own story of being disowned for her art, of building her life from scratch, of the judgment she faced for the ink on her skin and the women in her bed. We were from different worlds, but in that dark, quiet room, we found we spoke the same language of the heart. Underscore 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 underscore. But the outside world was a patient predator. The tension was a constant hum beneath our happiness. My phone was a leash, its buzz with a call from my mother yanking me back to reality. I started wearing high-collared blouses even in the summer heat to hide the faint love bite on my neck, a mark more rebellious than any tattoo. I became a master of lies, crafting elaborate excuses for my absences. The fear was a cold stone in my stomach. It wasn't just my parents' disapproval I feared, it was the media frenzy, the lurid headlines that would paint Ren as a corrupting influence, a gold digger, a deviant. My world had a way of destroying what it couldn't control. I saw the question in Ren's eyes sometimes when I had to leave abruptly, a flicker of doubt that I was ashamed of her. The truth was, I was ashamed of my own world, of the cowardice that kept me from shouting my love from the rooftops. The first crack appeared in the form of my mother's head of security, a man named Alistair, who appeared one afternoon as I was leaving Wren's studio. He didn't say a word. He just stood by my town car, his expression neutral, but his presence was a thunderclap of warning. They knew. Of course they knew. I was never truly off the grid. The stakes were raised again at a Rutherford Hotel's charity auction. I was playing my part, a mannequin in a silk gown, when I saw her. Wren. She stood at the back of the room, having used her own money to buy a ticket, a defiant figure in a sleek black suit amidst a sea of tuxedos. Her eyes met mine across the crowded room, a bolt of lightning in the stifling atmosphere. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was the bravest, most terrifying thing anyone had ever done for me. My mother, standing beside me, followed my gaze. Her hand tightened on my arm, her nails digging in like talons. She didn't say a word, but the message was clear. This ends now. Underscore 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 underscore. The crisis broke a week later. I was summoned to my father's study, the room that had always felt more like a courtroom. He stood by the fireplace, his back to me. On his mahogany desk lay a series of photographs. Me, kissing Wren goodbye outside her studio. Me laughing, wearing her clothes. The images were sharp, clinical, violating. "This dalliance is over, Genevieve," my father said, his voice like ice. "We have prepared a statement. You will announce your engagement to Robert Kensington next week. It will quash these unsavory rumors." Robert was the son of a banking magnate, bland, safe, and politically perfect. The thought made me physically ill. "No," I whispered, the word tasting foreign on my tongue. My mother stepped forward. "This is not a negotiation, Genevieve. It is for your own good. That woman is using you. She is a phase, a rebellion. She will tarnish everything we have built. If you do not end it, we will. We will bury her. We will sue her for harassment, for stalking. We will make sure her business fails and her name is mud. You will never see her again, and she will be broken. The choice is yours." The choice was an illusion. It was my gilded cage or her utter destruction. That night, I went to Wren's apartment. I felt like a ghost. She knew immediately that something was wrong. She tried to hold me, but I was stiff, frozen by a grief that hadn't even happened yet. "What is it, Jen?" she asked, her voice soft with concern. I couldn't look at her. I told her. The words fell from my lips like stones, clinical and cold. I repeated my parents' threats, their ultimatum. I told her I had to let her go. The pain that bloomed in her eyes was the most devastating thing I had ever witnessed. It was a physical blow. "So that's it," she said, her voice cracking. "You're just going to let them win? You're going to marry some man and live a lie. They'll destroy you, Wren." I cried, finally meeting her gaze. "Let them try," she shot back, her own tears falling now. "I have nothing they can take that I'm not willing to lose for you. But you have to be willing to lose it too. You have to choose me. Choose us." Just a quick pause. If you're enjoying this, hit that subscribe button and stay with us here on Sapphic Tales. I was crumbling. The weight of centuries of expectation was crushing me. I wanted to be brave, but I was so terribly afraid. I looked around her small, warm, messy apartment, the only place I had ever felt real, and then I thought of the cold, vast emptiness of the life they were offering me. "I can't," I sobbed. the words tearing from my throat. I'm not strong enough. The light in her eyes extinguished. She nodded slowly, a gesture of profound defeat. She walked to the door and opened it. The finality of the action stole the air from my lungs. Then you should go, she whispered, not looking at me. If it kept you hooked, subscribe now to Sapphic Tales so you never miss the next. I stumbled out into the hallway. The door clicked shut behind me, a sound as final as a coffin lid closing. I had made my choice. I had chosen the cage, and in doing so, I had shattered the only thing that had ever made me feel free. Underscore 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 underscore. I didn't get in the town car. I walked. I walked for hours through the city, the cold night air biting through my thin jacket. I passed the glittering windows of Rutherford hotels, seeing my reflection, a pale, hollow imitation of a person. I ended up at the river, staring into the dark, churning water, the lights of the city reflecting on its surface like a distorted version of my life. And then I felt it. A faint, persistent thrum on my back, right between my shoulder blades. The swallow. It was as if the bird itself was beating its wings against my skin, a desperate reminder of what she had given me. A claim. An identity. A piece of her soul forever fused with mine. She had chosen me when she inked me. She had chosen me every time she kissed me. She had been willing to lose everything. And I had been willing to lose her. The realization was like a lightning strike. It wasn't about strength. It was about love. And I loved her. I loved her more than I feared my parents, more than I valued my name, more than I desired a peaceful, miserable existence. I turned from the river and started to run. I didn't go back to the penthouse. I went to the only place that had ever felt like home. I ran up the stairs to her apartment and pounded on the door, my breath coming in ragged sobs. The doors swung open. Wren stood there, her face ravaged by tears, her eyes wide with shock. I didn't say a word. I simply fell into her arms, my body shaking with the force of my sobs. I clung to her, burying my face in her neck, inhaling the scent that was my salvation. I choose you, I choked out, the words muffled against her skin. I'm so sorry. I choose you. I choose us. Her arms tightened around me, holding me up as my knees gave way. She held me there, in the doorway, as I wept away my old life. She didn't say, I told you so. She just held me, her own tears mingling with mine. The fifth kiss, the one that felt like a new beginning, was salty with our tears and sweet with the promise of a future we would build together on our own terms. Underscore 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 underscore. I left the Rutherford name behind like a shed skin. It wasn't easy. There were lawyers, furious phone calls, and a vicious media storm. But we faced it together. I used my knowledge of business and finance not to manage hotels, but to help Wren expand her studio into a collective for marginalized artists. I found my purpose not in presiding over an empire, but in building a community. Now, I am simply General the Swallow on my shoulder is no longer a secret rebellion. It is a public declaration of who I am and who I love. Our love was unexpected, a collision of worlds that created a new, more beautiful one. She was the tattoo artist who taught me that the most permanent marks are not those of ink, but of love, and that the greatest wealth is not an inheritance, but the courage to claim your own life, one brave heartbeat at a time. Subscribe to Sapphic Tales for more stories where love is the bravest choice of all.